like our Discord just started like actively berating them.
They'll do that with everybody. They do that with us, dude.
With us. Yeah.
We're some limey libs to our own Fed cord. It's wild. They talk mad shit about us.
You specifically, CRK. They'll be sending in CRK.
I should probably get some of that, like thicken my skin a little bit.
Yeah.
Couldn't hurt.
Yeah.
I feel
a little
like
bit of edge.
I feel like I'm the retard whisperer with the Discord server for the most part. I think if you just it's kind of like throwing meat to a shark tank or something. Like every once in a while, if you just go in and just post a hard R, they'll kind of respect you a little bit more. So I'm at Slavoid T.
All right, this is Shit Spouter 37.
This is Black.com build.
This is the Fed Post.
Every once in a while, if you just go in and just post a hard R, they'll kind of respect you a little bit more, and it kind of helps. But
And then I'm in there just like, hey, actually, the hard R isn't even funny, guys. Get creative with it.
right.
Just like earnest posting, like motherfuckers.
Crypto lib. You sound like a crypto lib.
This is like the like ecology you guys have cultivated.
Oh yeah, it's fascinating, man. Because I didn't really expect that, because I just thought like hard right wing, like people like that, they're gonna be the hard ones to pitch to. That's what I thought, was like, yo, they'll never like our shit. Like, we'll try to get a few of them, but they're like the most of them. Honestly,
yeah, they're the easiest.
Well, they're fucking battered. There's no like avenues for them. There's nobody talking about. There's not many people talking for them. So like,
I
if
think
there's
also,
anybody
deep in their heart, everyone wants just like some baseline economic populism, like as far as economic side of things go. And so they hear us talking about that and they're like, oh, fuck, I want that. But it's usually attached to liberal bullshit. And then they're like, whoa, Slav said the hard R. Wait a minute. You compare the two?
Yeah, it's like,
So just a soy facing because I said the N-word.
yo, that's really how it is.
It really is. It's fucking stupid, dude.
it's like that's like the soy face with like a hard R is like the alchemical marriage of like the alt-right and like social justice, like lib stuff.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, 100%.
Oh, yeah. Or just consumerism in general. Just like you need like a market signal. It's like, hey, I'm down. I'm like, this is my signal. Like, I just love that shit. Like, it's empty to me. I don't know. It's empty. Like, a fucking Fed could say the hard R, right? A literal federal agent could say that. Like, we're federal agents. We say that. It doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, or just a retard. Like, or just someone with the wrong ideas generally. Like, I don't know. That's not any type of anything. Like, that's just like, some people think it's edgy and funny, but actually it's just boring and not even creative.
Well, what we talked about last time. It's like transgression for like transgression's sake.
It's literally that, but just for the right. Like, it's just like, let's do some bullshit.
It's also kind of like a bit initiatory, because you're like crossing like a taboo boundary, so it like solidifies your position in the subculture a little bit.
People will literally
like, to put something on the line, even like in a petty way. Yeah, it is kind of hazing. It's like
that's what they think of it as.
I mean, they'll literally do that in the Discord. They'll be like, post hard R to new members. They'll be like, let's see it. Prove you're not Fed. And you're like, dude, what?
It's full on like I mean, I don't know, maybe I see too many things through this lens, but just because it's so such a traumatic word culturally,
it's the most taboo word. Yep.
Yeah, so like it's like a little bit. Maybe it's a little bit traumatic to just post it. Even I'm probably like naively underestimating people by saying that. But it's
I think that's right. I really do. That's the one word that's like the most taboo you can get. Like, there's no other word.
There's no way you can like fake the like frizz-on that comes with like actually saying it.
Yeah, I mean, like as much as we say, and there's a kernel of truth to it, right? That it's vapid and all of that, but like as a signifier for like social sorting, like people are doing it and it clearly works. So it is what it is, and that's going to be like if you just works, so. Well, I mean, it like self-evidently works because certain people that don't subscribe to a certain but
you have irony left people who say it. and they vote Democrat.
Well, yeah, but like this, then clearly this speaks to something that's just like beyond.
Yeah, well, it's
just
like
that.
I think we're all like maybe a little bit like peripheral to like I guess I'm always like really out of date with my like ways of referring to these things because like I'm on Twitter every day, but like I don't really keep in my head straight like what everybody is calling themselves.
Oh yeah, it's all bullshit.
But like the like weird right or whatever, or like the not alt right, but like people who are into like breeding Evola and stuff like that. Like I'm peripheral to all those people, and I guess it does like there is a sort of like barrier to entry, which is you just have to like tolerate people having just ambient far right opinions about things and stuff.
It's like
this
you
sort
go
of people from like you have to have a bit of like a strong stomach, and you have to like not that I feel like I'm just aggrandizing my like
I totally agree.
Usuals. But like I think it's good in the sense that you like it means you have like a capacity to like just be around like controversial ideas and offensive ideas and not just immediately be like traumatized by them.
Exactly.
Ironically,
like it's
very tolerant.
Yeah.
Well, not even ironically. Like it's like 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 I said, just like the utility of it is like self-evident. If we just made like the number one word you can't say in the world be like cupcake or something, and then there was like a club of people that just liked saying cupcake, then like
but then that's also
but there's no historical
significance
to cupcake either, and there's no material like significance to the word cupcake that
but people do like
to the
constructing things like that in real time though, like the little like finger the OK sign thing. Whereas, like, it's this kind of weird, like, hyper-real situation where everyone's like there'll be some kind of 4chan joke or something, and it's just, like, obviously bait. But then, the people who encounter it are so, like, freaked out that they just hysterically reify it and make it real and kind of bring it into, like, a kind of semi-concrete, like, social reality.
Yeah, like Pepe. Like Pepe.
Yeah, exactly.
Like it's a great example of that.
And I think that certainly not like early internet, but like early 2010s internet was so in a way that isn't the case anymore, though like it's definitely still around, was so like fucking addicted to like mass just moral outrage in a way that was really weird. Like you guys remember like Coney 2012, right? And just that.
Bro, they came to my high school.
Oh yeah,
that's what radicalized me. I wasn't into politics before this.
We gotta get this motherfucker.
I'm joking before anyone takes that serious.
We're all like children of Coney politically, right?
Everything's downstream from Coney.
Yeah,
and even like the Harambe meme is making fun of just this weird, wacky carnival mirror, like just moral indignation drug that everybody's on, and so it makes makes sense that like, and maybe even just as a point, it's very lazy to just be like, just like throw out an N-word to show that you're just not, that you at least have the awareness of that huge tidal wave that is really easy to fall into of just moral indignation. Now, is it like really high-minded shit and you're like really rethinking the wheel and everything? No, but I don't know that it's really ever
but I think there's because there's that whole like left, like dirtbag left thing where they're like, oh, if Bernie just said slurs, we would have won. You know what I mean? And it's like this thing of like, oh, like the slurs are the difference. It's like, dude, at the end of the day, it's just virtue signals. Like that's not enough for me. I mean, you do that, sure. I mean, you could say whatever you want.
Yeah,
and then
like
you just vote Democrat. Like you get vaccinated. Like what's
like I said, like it's not. There's not a lot of meat on that bone. I just don't know that anyone's really like I don't know that anyone that's actually honest or doesn't have their head up their ass is really claiming that it is really meaningful.
To be clear, like when we say the N-word, we do mean the like word Coney, right?
Exactly.
That specific N-word. No, but you're right, Yeerk. Like the tolerance thing, or like the like. I didn't really have a lot of right wing people who would follow me when I was just straight normie, like left or whatever, left lib, and like. Now I do. And like, I think before my reaction would have been if they're in the comments, just like, this is why we need to kill all the Jews, or we need to like, I mean, obviously they're not going to Fed post that hard, but they're going to be like, sure, why we need to get rid of the gays, whatever. Like before I would have said something. I would have been like, oh, that's retarded. And now I'm like, I see it. I don't say anything. I'm like, oh yeah, okay. Like there's no need for that. Like
I literally think it's like a moral discipline not to virtue signal.
Yeah.
You know, like I think it's like it's not enough to just like say that like I mean I don't know, I'm not sure if virtue signaling is really a useful term, but just the kind of like the sort of like liberal like market of sentiment, you know, or like sentimentality.
Oh yeah.
I think it's like you kind of, especially when it comes to things like racism and stuff, I think it actually is more of like a moral discipline not to just like spout and empty sentiments.
Yep.
It's like it's literally better to just like hold your tongue, you know, a lot of the time. Like and it's like hard as well, because sometimes it's like tempting. I mean, it's like something that I try and be like conscious of, you know, and thoughtful about. Is like,
I mean, it seems like it always just kind of, I think that like virtue signal, like ways of demonstrating like your value or like social status or position or whatever to people, like it's like a normal thing and everything, but if you're constantly needing to do it, I feel like it comes from a place of uncertainty in yourself, and that's like childish weakness, and so I think like if you're you know the new people on the Discord, right, they say the N-word as an introduction, but if they're saying the N-word every day, you know, maybe they need to look in the mirror a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, like the term virtue signaling always has had this like mild connotation of like evo psych, I think, you know, where it's like, and then part of that is like, part of that's like the assumption that it's like necessarily insincere, and I think that's not even really like the problem with like just this like huge like matrix of sentimentality, which is like what social media really is. It's just like, it's not, the problem isn't that people aren't sincere. The problem is they're like extremely sincere, and it doesn't really like make any difference. And in fact, the actual process of what's happening is people know on some level that it's empty, but like by investing sincere belief into it and being like publicly passionate, it's a way of like confirming to themselves that it's real and that it's therefore like consequential in some way.
Right. It feels real to me, and that's the same thing.
Yeah, it's the only way to make it real is just to.
Yeah.
What's the evo psych thing you were mentioning though?
Well, just because it's like the virtue signal thing, it's like always part of this kind of like, well, you know, people are doing it to like, you know, build their status in these communities and stuff. And it's like, that's my evo psych guy voice, by the way. I don't know if that's like, I think obviously there's like a degree of status to it, but I don't think that's like, you know, it's like, you know, you could almost take it to like there being like alphas and betas of virtue signaling or something, you know what I mean? Like who's like the big cheese, like virtue signaler or whatever. I don't feel like it really works like that, you know?
I think you're right. I think a lot of it is just like trying to make it real and just kind of like, you know, well, with the left, I know for sure it's to be like, I'm a good person. That's what it always is. Like, I have to let you know that I'm a good person.
It like reifies this binary of like, it's either authentic or it's status based, you know? And I think that the problem is that it's authentic, and that like people think that like autobiographical narratives and like authentic personal experience and stuff like have a kind of direct material effect on the world, you know?
In what way?
Like, I mean, well, the problem is they don't. You know,
right.
They kind of indirectly do. Like, I don't know. I think it'd be complicated to like chart the relationship, though.
Yeah, because I don't know. I don't know about the right one as well, but like with the left one, obviously it's like, yeah, there's just a lot of like just sort of reaching out into the abyss, just completely like out of nowhere. Like this, what you're talking about, what the conversation was has nothing to do with it, and you're just like bringing in like, oh well, there's also somebody's talking about like pregnancies or something, and you're like, hey, let's not forget that there's men who give birth. Like pulling it out of the fucking ethos. It's like, you know, what is that? Is that because like, I don't know. There's a part of me that thinks that it's insincere, but I don't know if it's like a.
Well, it's just like I don't think there's like much real like intimacy between people in that like kind of political subculture, and I do feel like there is more on the right, like because people generally view themselves as like already kind of like self-consciously or willfully outcast, like. I mean, not to say there aren't like, you know, little like subcultural taboos and stuff, but like there's a lot more kind of people who are just comfortable like chilling and kind of being themselves or talking about things they like without having to sort of like license it, which I think is the thing that goes on with like the libs, quote unquote, because like everything they do has to be kind of like has to pass through this like mental checkpoint of like making sure that it's like inclusive, and you know it always has to be like measured up to this like external ideal of like of sentiment, you know, like the pregnant man thing.
I think it's like any old thing in the past of, you know, going to a cocktail party and just, you know, bringing up like some like latest bullshit you read in the New Yorker, just to kind of be like, oh, hey, you know, keeping up, right? Like,
right.
You know,
I think it's largely like a signifier, just in group and out group, more than it is like appealing. I don't think it's like trying to like appeal, like, oh, I need to get these people on my side. It's more like, oh, no, I am one of you already, kind of thing. So I think it's like an earnest intention behind it, but people are using these like very like just decrepit symbols in order to do such that make it seem not earnest.
To be fair, I do think that people like put like they do invest sincere moral feeling into these, like,
absolutely,
you know,
totally.
But the problem is that that atrophies after a while, because you've like projected it into this like image or hieroglyph or something, and like it stops being real after a while. Like,
well, and the other thing that I think about often too is like I'm sure there's examples where this would be, you know, not a great approach, but like I don't really think that like trusting and believing your own emotions that much is like that good of an idea, because it's just
it's not.
No, like it's a terrible it's a helpful tool but a terrible master, right? And like
it's bad to like identify with your emotions, you know, like I think that you should recognize them as like exactly
and like and I think that God damn it, the hamster in the wheel in my mind is dying right now.
Oh no, this always happens to me.
It always happens, right?
Yeah.
No, I think that also, and I think this is a big just reality of news cycles and everything, is that I think people burn themselves out by jumping from lily pad to lily pad of different emotional things to get heavily invested in. And I think that then they inevitably end up at like, you know, I haven't like watched this like Bo Burnham special or things kind of similar to that yet, but I do know, like, you know, I don't know if you guys can relate to this, but the amount of like normies that just kind of like will just kind of casually randomly bring up like, you know, that they're just emotionally dead and constantly exhausted or normies just say like, oh yeah, we all hate ourselves.
Yeah, that's the baseline for most
people. But they
people,
don't have any like critical consciousness of like, they're not like, none of them are ever like, maybe we should like theorize why everybody like me and everyone I know is like deeply unhappy and like spiritually numb.
And that's the crazy thing. And that's the crazy thing is I think that there's a component of like kind of like delayed response a little bit, where if you tell normies like, no, like that, like this moral cause that you're just like feeling this catharsis about right now that's fleeting, like that's stupid and bullshit, and like I'm not going to invest myself into that. And they're going to be like, well, wow, like why are you such a pessimistic, negative asshole, right? But then like a month from now, when they're like having that emotional burnout, like I'm not completely suicidally like depressed. I'm like doing okay because I didn't, you know what I mean? And like they're in this deep, deep pit. Right. Yeah. And it's just like, no, like I just abstained from like getting on the merry-go-round because that's what it is. Right. Like,
like you have to, I think there's this like problem of like everything has become like magnified and abstract, and like obviously this has always been with liberalism in a certain way, but it's like it's sort of flattened out over the last 10 years, which is just this idea of like we should never like have judgment. I'm always on this like kind of rant or whatever, but like we should never have judgment. Everybody should always like tolerate everybody and everything everyone does all the time, and that's expressed like in those kind of like, you know, stuff we've always seen of like let people enjoy things. And obviously like that's all, you know, no one really like seriously posts that anymore because it became so like like everybody became so aware of it. But like, you know, we're still living in those sorts of like, people are still living with that kind of like consciousness. And so they have to like, it means that their like critiques and judgments of things, which arise naturally within them, like they have to find some other means of like escape, you know? So they have to be like laundered through various things or disguised in various ways. And I think that's why like media criticism has become so like moralistic politically. And so like bereft of like real aesthetic judgments about things, you know? Because on the one hand, it's like no one wants to like, people realize that like an aesthetic judgment rests on like a series of assumptions about the world, and no one wants to like have unconscious assumptions anymore, in case they're like exclusionary in some way.
Yeah, that's always rubbed me as wrong. Like people are like, you can't judge this person, you can't judge this motherfucker. Judging is what makes you human being. Like an animal goes around and doesn't judge its thoughts, it doesn't judge the things around it, it just does. Well, it does judge it, but it acts on them instinctually. Like a human being, you're meant to judge the things around you every single day. That's how you make qualitative decisions. Like
so like people now inhabit this like hyper ideological media environment where like they are like trying to like never make judgments, and that extends to their own life. And it's like, you know, like people then like do these like autobiographical posts like on Twitter where they sort of like fictionalize themselves as like you know, like I'm this like dirtbag left guy, like I live surrounded by trash and like unwashed
I'm like Oscar
the
Grouch.
And it's like, you know, again, I'm so unhappy, like, and it's like, well, you know, like you have to like begin this critical process of like distinguishing between the things you do in your own life that have consequences, you know. But then there's this like constant availability where you can just be like, well, I'm like a depressed person, so I'm never going to clean my room. And that's, and
you'll
like,
have 40 other people that are online posting the same type of shit, reaffirming that same belief in you. And you're like, oh yeah, that's just like how it is, dog. And you're like, no, dude, you're just like, need to dig yourself out of the shit, buddy.
Yeah, and then what happens is like, you know, like the N-word, like having like a fucking messy room and just like living in trash all the time becomes its own like mark of community. So like you can't actually like change yourself without like betraying all of these people.
Well, it's like these like, it's like all those people that you see like that turn themselves into like basically unidentifiable as humans. Like they just get this crazy chop. They'll like stretch their ears to some crazy length and get their hair some unnatural color and like chop off a nostril or some shit and be like, this is actually what
chop
I'm
off
about.
A nostril in the best case scenarios.
That's a little bit north of where it's usually happening, but
we're being charitable right now, aren't we?
There has to be some like place where, you know, we're just like, it's like something's gone wrong here, like
no doubt about it. And that's like I guess that's kind of like tends back to some discussions we've had before on the slippery slope that we spoke about, where it's like, at what point in time can everyone just look around and just be like, whoa, yeah, I think we went a little bit too far. And it's like this individualization and this thing you're talking about with liberalism, it's like that doesn't allow that to ever occur.
No.
I mean, is this just about different understandings of truth? Like, is that just like all it really comes down to is people just like not being...
like everyone being isolated in their own understanding of like a perceived reality instead of one shared notion of reality.
I think what we're seeing is this kind of like gradual separation of like it's like this kind of dualism where like there's this kind of progressive separation of like subjectivity from quote unquote science. And so like everybody believes in like this external material world that is like kind of naively equated with science. You know, it's not like science discovers it or whatever. It's just like there's science out there and everybody has to like defer to it, and it's like mediated by experts. And then aside from that, everybody just has their own private subjectivity. And within that, like that sort of realm, like you can literally be or do anything. Like you can identify as like a wolfkin or whatever. Like there's literally no kind of like limit to it. And it's based on this assumption that like the body is like limited, but like subjectivity is kind of free to like rove around and be whatever it wants.
It's like people just think their body is like some vessel that they're just like temporarily inhabiting.
Like a meat bag or something.
Yeah.
I fucking hate that. That's another fucking like lib ass nihilist quirky thing that people say.
Look, the thing is, hate. If you like take that stuff really seriously, it's like genuinely misanthropic.
It is.
You know? It's like it's hatred of the human race. It's like really awful.
I feel like it's mirrored. Terrible. I feel like it's mirrored on the right a lot too, though. Like you see it like maybe not even on the right, but like in more quote unquote traditional type of communities and beliefs and structures. Like you see it in like Christianity or different religions where they're like, actually I'm of the earth, but I'm not in it. And like, this is not my final form. This isn't my real home. This is not. And it's like, it has a similar utility on the other end of it.
But New Age spirituality as well. Like
I was just going to say like climate change, degrowth, like singularity is like the lib true world theory. This is the latest installment in my favorite my current favorite concept, which is millennials and zoomers neurotically reverse engineering boomer shit. and just like and having it be all kind of just like horrible and science-y and just markedly worse than the previous stuff.
And stuff.
That's what's happening with everything, though. It's not just zoomers doing that boomer shit. That's like all of history in the past like 40 years has been just completely trying to revamp past things that have existed because no one has any type of vision to look past or look forward into anything new. So it's just like trying to.
Well, I think that's
reboots.
I agree with that, and I'll also say as a counterpoint that I think it also is proof of just like some level of truth in older concepts too. That like maybe it speaks to
sure in concepts like in like eternal concepts and stuff too. But like I'm just saying this plays out on a scale of like. It just plays out everywhere. It's not just like, oh, well, some people are like reaching back to more traditional religions to kind of like interface with that metaphysical whole that we all know of and feel and have a yearning to connect with. It's like, no, some people are trying to think that like maybe actually it's better if, everyone used like this one thing that everyone stopped using in the 60s, or like it'd be better if maybe we can just like, I don't know how to think of a new world. So now I'm just going to like say what we need to do is just try to tweak this other thing that obviously failed.
Wait, hold up. COH is that Lindy?
Well, okay, because I know what you're speaking to, Slav, and like I definitely think that there is 100% like natural eternal truths, and that there have been things that have been tried to be spoken to over millennia through various means, right? Explanations of the world around us and religion, spirituality, science, whatever it is. I think that's true, and I think that we do have to take a reverence of the fact that is something tangible, and that there are knowledges and things that we don't have anymore or may have lost or aren't as closely in contact with anymore that we could take from, but not to just like remodel things in that way. I don't know. I think that like a lot of stuff just comes from people just thinking this is the end of history, and like that's just the end of it, because that's how it feels. It feels like there's no way out. It feels like there's nothing to do. So when you're up against a wall, you push back in the opposite direction.
Yeah, well, it's similar to, I mean, not to like branch off into this whole other topic, but like, I feel like it's similar with like masculinity and like this kind of like the Bronze Age like bodybuilding kind of thing that like exploded, or like people wanting to return to like, like quote unquote traditional gender roles, or like images, like imaginary images of, traditional gender roles or whatever. And it's like, I think, when there is like so little kind of like constructive direction, or like there are no real like images of behavior that you can like relate to and kind of model, like you do turn towards like the most recent and most extreme image within recent cultural memory.
It makes me think of that clip from a couple years ago of like Shia LaBeouf doing the workout in the LA park that's just like simulated wood chopping, and it's just a bunch of like LA yuppies. Like it's like performing, like they're never fucking chopping any fucking wood. Why the fuck would they ever do that for any practical purpose, right? And so it becomes this, you want to talk about, simulacra, right? Like we're performing wood chopping, and and I don't even have a yard to stack any wood. It's sad. It's sad. And
because anytime you like do something like that, that's sort of like not really naturally in your way, that you don't really have to do it like really to do it, then I don't know about you guys, but if ever I do anything like that, like I'm always just thinking like, am I fucking doing this right? Like, like because it's just about like, it's about the image, and you can't really like confirm the image for yourself.
Well, it's horrible because like, in the past, we're a lot less fat people, right? Because just like the lifestyle, just kind of the average. I mean, in the past, that's a huge net I'm throwing out there, but you get what I'm saying. Like the basic operating level wasn't just like sitting in front of a computer monitor and just like eating puffy Cheetos, right? Like, and so like that's where like I know that I really don't like it when anybody just like offhandedly labels any kind of healthy or meaningful lifestyle as like a LARP. But like also when people do that, they're kind of correct, because like this stuff does need to be affected. Like like a fucking peon in the field is getting physical exercise by just what he does to survive. He does, like, the concept of going to the gym is fucking goo goo gaga LARP shit. You know what I mean? Like you have to lay that shit on, and like it helps that it's good for you and everything, but like
I mean,
that's weird. Yeah, where like going to the gym, and I've seen this in New York, is viewed as a virtue signal. Completely bizarre, because I don't understand that, because it's measurable. Like you could do it in isolation. Like you could just be exercising in isolation, no one could see it, and it would change your life for the
I
better.
do think that's definitely
yes. Well, what I'm kind of saying about it though at the same time is that on the other hand, like in the past, like when you talk about on average people being overweight these days, right? Tons of fatsos and everything like that. Like, well, yeah, because there are no factors just like built into modernity that keep people naturally from becoming lard asses. Yeah. And so
we don't need to.
Yeah, exactly. Like yes, you don't want to say people going to the gym are body fascists and that it's all virtue signaling LARP bullshit. But like at the same time, like, the people online that say like, oh, people that are chubby are just like complete morally reprehensible, complete horrible, you know what I mean? As opposed to the fact that it's just like, bro, like there are no external forces that make it so that you have to go run through the forest like Bap talks about with a spear. And like, and like people in the Bronze Age weren't like addicted to industrial agriculture. So like there's some things going on,
Yeah, all the trad stuff is completely rational because it's like it's for survival. There was times where we needed to survive. So all the things of like religious structure or traditional role, like gender roles, or disliking of outgroups, all that shit is completely rational. It's not from some magic cauldron of like evil or whatever, like the left might think. Like it's completely rational. Like, I mean, I guess that's Evo psych too or whatever, but like you can trace it back. It had a function. The thing is now these functions aren't as useful, and then we're just sort of left in this sort of like
they become
void.
Aestheticized.
And so it's kind of
an
like
image. Sorry, man. You go
ahead. I was just gonna say it's kind of like a cargo cult, like at certain points. But I want to hear what you were saying.
Well, yeah, no, I completely agree with you. Like it is like totally cargo cult. It's like trying to reconstruct this thing from the ground up. Like, and it's just this like Conan the Barbarian, like Robert E. Howard, like romance. Like, because it's like, okay, like, yeah, these things were like functional at some time, and then modernity, like, well, the whole of like history, develops things, and they become sort of like aestheticized again within like cultural memory. And then at the same time, it's like, I don't think that in itself, you just have to keep that in mind, because I think it is like, it can be of benefit to like,
it's necessary. I think it's necessary to have groups doing that, like, because I think that like anything new is going to grow out of the old, and a combination of the new and the old that's currently coexisting. So I think that like you need groups that are going to tend to lean into like more quote unquote reactionary ideals in order to like at the end of the day, balancing out to
absolutely
the right direction.
like the big asterisk to put on everything I'm saying here is that like I'm actively doing all of this shit in my own personal life, right? Like I engage in religion and shit like this, you know. I can just also acknowledge that like there's truth in the fucking criticism, and like I don't know, you know, just because I'm on the team that criticism takes aim at doesn't mean like I have to deny the point that they're making. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I think, you know, there are so many things, these like lost things that are being like reconstructed, or even just like imagined wholesale in the image of something from the past, that like there's a reason why they're emerging now at this time, and it's because they're like responding to like an unconscious need.
Yep.
And they like resonate with something in people, and like
absolutely.
I mean, like the irony of me is that like I have this like, since I began this account, I have this like weird like reputation as like an own the libs guy, and it's like sometimes people are like they'll like tag me in something and they'll be like own this person, and I do sometimes, but like, you know, like I'm like a lib in a sense, you know, like I am like a dreadfully sensitive man, and I'm very like sentimental myself, and like that's like ironically why, you know, because like we have a group like the Incels or whatever, it's like, well, I have this like indignation on behalf of them, and the fact that they're like an inappropriate group to be like quote unquote empathetic to,
right?
It's like, you know, that's like what happened to me. I just like found myself like empathizing with the wrong people in spite of myself, and like I could sort of understand their problems. And I realized that like the sort of like mythologies that people were like constructing to like attack them or dismiss them were like these really self-aggrandizing, you know, it's like totally like something that can kind of expel them from the community. Like they're this evil that needs to be exercised. When like the incel example in particular, but there are others, it's like all these things, they have their root in like real social problems. Like the relation between the sexes is really dreadful right now. Everybody is like really suspicious of one another, and that has real like material reasons. And so like a group will be constructed and like will polarize itself into existence as people like self-sort themselves into it, you know.
I think
it's like a dustbin, you know. It's like it's a way for like getting rid of inconvenient people. Sorry.
Yes, and I think that the incel example is so funny because you know, one thing I just kind of was thinking about, I noticed quite a bit this week. Not that it's far from new and a recent thing, but it's just like leftists are so much like the keepers of the meritocracy, and like meritocratic reasoning is kind of at the heart of like a lot of the main go-to arguments against incels.
Absolutely, yeah. Like it's all like this like rhetoric of like entitlement.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, they're basically just like treated like brushing them away like the welfare queens of the sexual marketplace.
Yeah, exactly.
And, yeah, it's like, oh, like you're depressed and you want to fucking kill yourself, like sink or swim, motherfucker.
That's an L. Yeah, you just post
and the criticisms of them, like even like the really like liberal or feminist ones, always like reify the idea of a sexual marketplace in the first place.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
They never actually like depart from that frame. They stay within this kind of like, these guys are just like the worst. So like, thank goodness we're not with them, you know.
Yeah, exactly. And it's always and it just feeds into it more.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It does. Absolutely. Yeah, I mean the incel dismissal is always funny because like without fail, whenever somebody says something that's out of you know, the normal boundaries of accepted discourse, there will be a lib saying that this is an incel saying this. That's like the go-to insult.
Yeah. And that's just like, you know, saying that you don't fuck is like the worst thing that can, you know, that's like the worst thing anybody can say to you now, because it's like
society has rejected you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just like repeating, I'm sorry guys, I'm just repeating my material from other podcasts, but like, it's this like thing of like, you know, oh, I must fuck as much as possible. I must collect as much pleasure in this lifetime as I can before I die. There's like nothing else.
you know, that's actually an interesting angle that you just took there, because I was going to say, right, it is, you know, sort of like CRK just kind of said, of like, it's you know, did you pass the test, right? Like, were you were you good enough to be admitted entrance into
acceptable society?
Exactly. Or it's very symbolic, right? Like it's the ultimate test because you're granted entrance into another person, right?
Yeah, that's a fact.
Yeah. And like
more so for men.
The way you responded. Oh yeah, that's a fact.
Amen, brother. No, I mean, mostly for men. I mean, not to make this a gender thing, but I mean, totally. For women, like this is less of a character evaluation. It's like a physical
lesbians
evaluation.
certainly ain't doing it that way. But
that's true.
But point is like I see that as kind of like as just kind of like I mean, maybe it isn't different from what you said, Yeerk, but like point is I was going to say is that you kind of framed it as like you didn't reach the quota of how much pleasure you could seek in this life. And I think that's so fascinating because then I immediately zoom out and I apply that reasoning, that metric of success to other things, right? And it's just people being like, oh, well, like, I've done this much travel. I did this much partying in my youth. I've wrung this much value out of these eras of my life in, going like my life was a washed out music video. And I had all of these great Polaroid pictures posted on Instagram. You know what I mean? And it's it's very strange. It's the
hedonism.
It's so many Instagram posts of girls doing that John Lennon quote of like, time you enjoyed wasting was time well spent. Like, I don't know.
That's almost like a kind of like a prayer, like the way that's being used to like banish like FOMO anxiety, which is being manufactured all the time.
I think John Lennon wrote quite a few of those kinds of prayers.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's undeniable that incels develop extreme thinking. I think that's an undeniable thing I've seen.
That's like, sorry, you go on. Yeah.
No, I was just going to say like, to whatever discredit there is in that. But the way it's dismissed is just like it's an internal problem. It's just a you problem. When the rate of incels are going up, atomization, alienation, people living alone is going up. People are fucking less. In the younger generation, it's clearly not a you thing. It's clearly a broader thing.
Well, it's like the reality is just that there are like lots of like lonely people who haven't been like socialized very well and don't have like access to social opportunities and stuff, and or depressed, or and then the way that's uploaded into social life, which is all online now, is like incels, which is this like it's real only by identification, either you identifying it or someone else identifying you with it. Mm-hmm. And so it's like, I don't know, it's just like a cheese grater or something, it's just like all these fucking wretched, lonely people.
I mean, if there's growing incels and growing femcells, and every woman starts assuming every guy's about to rape them, and every man assumes that every woman is like a conniving, gold digging whore or whatever, like, you know what I mean? Like that's what's going to happen. And does that mean that it's true, or that I think that that's the reality? No, I don't think that. But I'm not going to dismiss someone saying that and being like, oh, it's a you problem. Like, you're just like a crazy person in your room. Like, if everybody is starting to think it more frequently, then it's not him. It's not just him or her. It's like there's clearly something bigger going on.
It's like the emotional landscape in which we're all living, in which it's like that much harder on an individual level to try and be like kind and open to people and like not be kind of exploitative within.
That's how they dismiss it. They're just like, oh no, it's just you.
Well, and that's the trap that everybody always falls into, right? It's like if you say like, hey, like, I don't really know if like, walking around as a gal thinking that every guy is just a surefire rapist who's just going to get you, or like, or acting like every woman is just some like roasties demon who's gonna
succubus.
Some succubus who's gonna kill you. Like it's like someone who's just constantly assuming every time they get behind the wheel of a car, they're just gonna like get into a head-on collision and shoot out the windshield. Like,
it's fear-driven for sure.
The response to them isn't to be like, no, like that premise that you die in a car accident is totally illegitimate. It's just that it's like, is it helpful to center that behind every time you get in your fucking car? Like, that's not tenable.
Yeah. It's like, yeah, dude, of course that could happen. All sorts of bad shit could happen all the time in any realm. You still got to do shit, dude. Like, that's like what living is, man.
I mean, I do think that, like, I will say, I do think that, like young women especially have also been, like, uniquely failed by, like, the past 10 years of, like, culture and like liberal feminism and stuff like that. Like, I do think it has been, like, a fucking, like, disaster. And I'm sure that, like, like, you know, like, it's just this thing. It's like, like, people have found themselves getting into, like, frightening dissociative experiences, and like they develop like misandry as like a coping mechanism, you know, and it's like you don't want to like identify with their like hatred of you because that will scald you, but like
COS, you go ahead.
I was just gonna say that's just happened. Like, I think that you were saying that women were uniquely failed by the past 10 years, and I think that it's very, very evident that way, but I think that young men are equally as failed because like they're dealing with the same, like the exact same things happening, but just mirrored on the other side of things. So it's like
it's the flip side of it. And that's the crazy thing is like I want to like kind of unpack what you mean by how women were failed a little bit more, because the first thing that comes into my mind, and I wonder if you mean even more than just this, but like the first thing that comes to my mind is just that like it's insane that we consider a category of people, women, that make up half the fucking population to be like marginalized people that should think of like their early adult lives as like a trauma inflicted on them by like a society that hates it. Like, it's half of the fucking world. Like, how does that work? You know what I mean?
I think like I just am thinking about things like Tumblr, right? Like, because I remember like being on Tumblr and, like,
culture or promiscuity
like sex positivity and all this kind of stuff, like and just these like the what's like happening with like masculinity and femininity is like the way they're kind of polarizing, where it's like supposed to be becoming more like open and inclusive and flexible, but really it seems to me that like it's like on one end you have this kind of like drag, like extreme, like hyper exaggerated femininity, and then on the other end you have this like this kind of like slightly unicoid kind of androgyny. And or on the like the side of masculinity, you have like these like really stoic men who are like supposed to be toxic or whatever. And it's like, I really think the whole idea of toxic masculinity is fake, by the way. Like, I think it was something that was like invented by like Netflix shows, you know, of like showing these like silent, like stern men or whatever. But that's become like, now it's like if you depart from that image of masculinity, if you're a guy, then you're like, whoa, like, I guess I must not be a guy. So I do think like gender used to be like more like the way it was performed. You know, it might have reflected a more like stratified social order.
It was more functional too. Like, it just had more material reason behind it.
But then also, I think like within that definition, it's like I always say this, like if you go back and look at like an old Sherlock Holmes TV series or something, right? Like the range of like emotional expression that's like available in this like 70s TV show that, you know, is like so much broader than the range of emotional expression that's like available to guys now. It's really shocking. Or like if you look at like an actor like Peter O'Toole, like his roles in certain films, like all these like, you know, there's like a lot of like kind of what we now think of as like femininity to him, you know, or like vulnerability and stuff, or I don't know, like all of this stuff is just buried history now. It's all like esoteric. Like,
I like that, and to your point that you made a second ago, like, I mean, this just immediately brings up these fucking articles about like Frodo and Samwise actually really just were like sucking each other's dicks or something.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say, for real. It's like,
yeah, dude,
they just like, they reify every like, so they're basically, the problem's like, oh well, masculinity is toxic and this and that and the other. So what they do to solve that is they're like, so actually if you are showing vulnerability though, you're actually gay maybe, or maybe you're a girl. Instead of like, they take the flip side of like what like toxic men or whatever, apparently their vision of what they think toxic masculinity is or is purported to be, and then their response to that is like, oh well, like actually maybe if you're not within that, you're actually a girl or something instead. Like, it's the same framework. It's like the macho guy telling you, oh well, if you ever cry or whatever, you're a girl. And then sometimes like, yeah, it's a girl. It's like these fucking leftists being like, well, you know, this guy's super vulnerable and sensitive, so actually he might be gay. And like, have you ever explored maybe you are NB, or maybe you're this or that, because you actually exhibit these feminine characteristics, and it's like, wait the fucking minute, dude.
I think it's like it should be considered as a form of like surveillance, you know. Like I think it's like a social technology, like it exists to like categorize behavior, you know, and make it like legible to like advertising and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's like we were talking with Gio and Lev, and we were talking about sex, and I was kind of talking about how it's this kind of ooey gooey, hard to kind of really put like firm definitions on like a lot of these things.
Yeah.
And I think that like what you just said about the social technology and put these categories and things, I think that that's what it is.
Totally.
And it reminds me of, I'm going to feel like a doofus if I said this in that very same conversation, but it reminds me of that TikTok of that broad with the bracelets on that indicate what gender identity she feels like she has today.
It's like a mood ring.
Yeah, and you're just watching it and you're just like, oh no, like you just don't understand. Like your emotional state is constantly changing.
Yeah.
And what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
Like what you're trying to do is like take that, you know, you're trying to draw a static form of the ocean.
And you're trying to take that like intangible ooey gooey shit and make it something concrete, and it's like that just doesn't exist. Like you can't do that. But I think it's important, like what Yeerk was saying though, that it's to make it intelligible for advertising and for marketing and to create new markets and be able to like. All of this is just categorization at the end of the day. And it's to help liberals and people in a post-rational society understand how to make sense of irrational things, trying to shove circles into cubes. But it's also
rationalize.
It's also important because the way they can, that is useful is because that's a way that you can accumulate capital by creating new markets to appeal to these new categories. And when you can categorize, you can run algorithms and you can, you know, do all these new type of things with them. And you couldn't really do that type of analytical stuff beforehand without the categories. Like when things are still intangible, you know, it's like, oh, well, that's like, it's a gray area. It's not like you're not going to be able to sell products to NB people if everyone's just like, yeah, sometimes dudes be doing shit that's not 100% masculine. Sometimes girls do shit that's not 100% feminine, and that's just how life is.
Like masculine and feminine are like discourses that are like being, you know, like participated in and like constructed by everybody.
Yeah, I mean, to go back to that thing about like what SLAV was saying about like, 50% of the population, like how can they be marginalized? Like in my mind, it's like, you know, they're like, you know, it's not about them being like marginalized as like a minority. It's like they're just being psyoped. And it's the same way they're psyoped like 95% of the planet, which is why it's men too. That's why there's incels and femcells. And with the women thing, it's like there's a rise of like female teenage suicides. Like that's just going up every year. Yeah, it's because they're fucking, you know, look at the shit they're seeing. They're seeing all this fucking nightmare shit on TikTok and Instagram. And they're basically like, you know, if you don't live this high status lifestyle, which is, you know, you have to have money for it. If you're not living like that, then you are a failure as a woman. You're not being, you know, if you don't want to be promiscuous, you're a failure as a woman. Like that's why these kids are fucking miserable. They're either faking it or miserable. And like, you know, I think this goes to the whole like exhaustion thing you guys were talking about before too, of like everybody is just being brutalized by the, you know, external world around them. And I mean, just makes them go navel gazing and makes them like dig deep into their identity. And like, I think that's where the media, we should talk about the media thing. You know, what you talk about like media affecting perception. Like, I think that's the big thing is that once you're in that vulnerable state, there's some media apparatus to come there, scoop you up and be like, hey, you know why you're miserable? Because of these people. And then you get into that hole. And then everything becomes around based on that dynamic. And then you just make yourself more miserable. You fry every day. They're frying your senses because like, look, there's another woman who did this bad thing, or there's another man who raped a woman. Look at this video. Look at this picture. Your senses are getting fried. And
it's like reconceptualizing the world in terms of like competing fandoms.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like the like man fandom and the like girl fandom and stuff, and they're always like fighting each other and like trying to like pretend that they're not like deeply invested in the other side's opinion of them.
Oh yeah, men going their own way. Men going their own way. Yo, I love that shit. They're like, yo, I spent all day on this boat. I'm like, yo, I caught 5 bass. I feel great. Thank God I'm not with that thieving fucking whore. You know what I mean? Like that's how they think about it. Is like it's always in the back of the mind. It's always
God, dude, man fandom and woman fandom is just it's so concise and just the perfect like
it's a problem.
It sounds gay.
It's like that problem that permeates everything. They're like everyone just tries to nowadays just define themselves by the things that they dislike the most rather than just like doing the shit that they believe in earnestly themselves.
Yeah, just be happy. Just
go fishing on a boat, bro. Like go catch 5 bass, but it doesn't have to be to own your old ex-girlfriend, dude. Just like go find a dope fishing spot, dude.
Dude, I think I saw somebody talk.
Dr. Zeus books got. Oh, sorry, man. What were you saying?
No, you go.
I was just gonna say, like, when those like Dr. Zeus books got like taken out of circulation or like got cancelled or whatever, it was like within a fucking week, there's like some like MAGA guy like with like a Dr. Zeus book, like smugly taking a photo of himself holding this Dr. Zeus book, like I'm triggering the libs with Dr. Zeus, and it's like, you know, immediately these books now are like, I mean, I don't know, everyone's forgotten about that now, so maybe this didn't happen, but like, you know, you can just see things getting recruited into these like culture war, like, and it's like now, like, you know, you can't have like a Dr. Zeus book that doesn't have that kind of like significance attached to it, you know, and that it's like a whole other layer of like cultural symbolism to like navigate.
Categorizing like consumer products to the consumers that you've already tried to categorize and make categorize themselves as well. You're like, well, these are existing things that were previously for everyone, but now let's make them like a limited run that's actually a pop-up shop for like Supreme does. So like now if you want to buy some like there'll be a little quick run on Dr. Seuss books by these MAGA people, like because now that's the thing for that moment. So you can keep doing
you've literally created a market like and specified it down to nothing.
It's the drive to quantify everything in the known universe. It reminds me there's a chapter in Cormac McCarthy's Outer Dark where there's bandits, these highwaymen talking, and this guy's like, yeah, my buddy here, he doesn't have a name because I don't want him to go to hell because because you can't own something that doesn't have a name. So if we just don't name him, then the devil can't take him. Right. And this is the
base, actually, dude.
Yeah. Fuck that.
Yeah. Knowing a demon's name gives you power over the demon. That's a fact.
That's a big fact.
Yeah, I mean, the highwaymen eat a baby in that chapter also, but
not
but
based.
Like,
based.
Can I get a base check?
Slightly less based.
Dude, Cormac, Mr. McCarthy, come on, Fed Post. We'll talk.
Have you guys? Any of you guys ever read All the Pretty Horses?
I have. No. Yeah.
That I really enjoyed that, but I don't know any of like the like horse terminology. But like part of like one of the sublime things about reading it for me was just like reading these like, and then he took the jangle of the gimmick and the club bin like and hooped it around the thlingover, and I'm just like, I love this. Like I can't picture any of this in my head. But
the only horse terminology I'm familiar with is buck breaking.
I haven't seen that.
We could if we ever have Vaush on, we could ask him about some horse terminology. I see him talking about horse terminology quite a bit.
I love that shit. Like of just like that terminology that it's like of a certain period, right?
Yeah.
And so you just let it wash over you.
Yeah, man. It's just technical shit.
Yeah, I love it.
And also like as far as like the branding thing, like the Nike Kaepernick shit, you know, like it was like, Nike is the woke brand, and then Under Armour was like, oh well, shit, we're the anti-woke brand, we're the MAGA brand, and it's like, you know, what I mean,
were they?
There was an association that like Under Armour was like, I don't know if the CEO, I think I remember the CEO was saying something like pro-Trump, who knows?
Oh,
but like it was like a marketing, a pivoted market. Well, not for, I don't know if it's for base.
That's the equivalent of sports apparel saying the N-word in our Discord.
Yeah. See, I don't know if it's for based reasons. Like, I doubt it's for anti-trade reasons or something like, you know, something good. I'm
very
pretty
much
sure
the
it was
opposite
to carve up the market, basically, like what you were talking about before.
Yeah.
And
Under Armour CEO Kevin Plank steps down amid turmoil around his comment that, quote, Donald Trump is an asset to the country.
See, this is what I mean. Like, what's that cost him to say that? Like, nothing. Like, I fucking got ratioed on Twitter saying that shit. Like, I put my blood and tears into that shit. It cost him nothing to say that.
It cost him his CEO spot.
I was just gonna say,
what the fuck are you talking about?
Well, it cost me more, way more.
It's true. It's true.
It cost me my entire circle of PMC lib friends.
Look, I know that you just lost your job, but I'm supposed to be doing numbers on Twitter, all right? So we all be hanging out with the Choppa guys later in Brooklyn. This reminds me of the Tim Heidecker talking to Sam Hyde, and he's like, I know you lost your job, but listen, like I got a sore back, my kid's got a cold. Come on.
My friend was telling me about it the other day.
Oh, it's funny, man. It's a classic.
Yeah.
But yeah, Yeerk, thanks for coming on. It's much
my pleasure. Yeah, no, I had like a really good time talking to you guys. It was great. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, we've been mutual a while. I've been looking forward to having you on at some point.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I was looking forward to talking.
Yeah. Do you have any stuff that you want to plug, like any writings or anything like that?
No.
Nice.
Love it. I know. I mean, like I've got like a Substack which has like 2 or 3 posts. Okay. And it's pinned on my like profile, so if people want to like read it. But I mean, probably like I doubt like probably most of the people who listen to this probably follow me already. So, but yeah, if you don't follow me on a really good account, obviously.
Yeah, you can still drop that at and get the plug.
Yeah. I can't even fucking remember whether it's like at P Yeerk or like at Yeerk P, because like it's like, man, I really fucked up with that. Like honestly, it's not.
I'm looking at it now to be I'm your publicist now. It's at P Yeerk.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're gonna tag it, obviously.
Yeah. No, I get so many people like asking me about like Animorphs, you know, because that's where it's from, and I was just trying to like, you know, I was just using that as like a found object because it's like a cool word and it sounds kind of weird and like uncanny.
Yeah, I didn't know what it meant. Actually, I had no idea.
Yeah, that's the problem.
No, that's good. You don't want to be too on the nose. You don't want to be Class Redux Killer. You don't want to, or Black.com. You don't want to be too on the nose.
I mean, I don't know. I like that. I think that's like it's got a kind of like iconic feel to it.
Hey, salute. But yeah, we should have you back on at some point or on a live stream or something.
Yeah, definitely.
All right.
Yeah, thanks very much. Cheers, guys.
Have a good night, man.
Take care.
You too. All right.